Hey, what is up, guys, and welcome to the second episode of the Collectors Company podcast. Today, we're joined by myself, John, Benny, Will, and Jesse. Glenn will be joining us in a little bit. It's just that he's just running a little bit late, but that's all good. He'll be joining us partway through the cast. But yeah, how we all doing today, boys? How we going?
Awesome,
good,
doing great.
good.
Well,
That's good. That's all good to hear. So yeah, it's been a week since our last podcast. Thanks to everyone who watched it. It's like people are watching it and we're hearing feedback in real life as well. Like people saying it was good to listen to. It felt like some good insights. That's really great to hear that people are enjoying it, and we hope the rest of you guys that we haven't had the chance to speak to are enjoying it as well. And if you are interested in our opinions, feel free to leave a comment on a certain like question you want to ask one of the guys, the topic you want us to discuss, so we have like something to talk about in later episodes that might interest you. But I think this week we have the U.S. Nationals coming up in a couple of days actually, so that's going to be fairly exciting. So we're going to go over some decks that we think will do really well, and maybe some players to keep your eyes out on. Obviously, we know like amazing players like Marcel Russell, Justin Rios, all of them will be competing, so it'll be really a fun event to watch. So starting off with you today, well, what do you reckon is going to be like the big thing about the U.S. Nationals? What's like your big thought going into it? Because it is also a bit awkward because Americans have only had the new set for I think a couple of days. So what do you think going into it?
I think the interesting thing to see here is how exactly, because this is, as you say, this is a unique meta, new sets coming in. Yes, the good players are going to have the cards, but the not having the cards for some like the more mid-tier players or some of the more budget players is going to influence deck choice, and I think that's going to be interesting. So I think we are just mostly not going to see too many set 15 decks and more set 14 decks that have been upgraded with set 15 cards.
Yeah, that sounds about right. What do you think, Bernie? Do you agree with Will or?
Yeah, pretty much. Like honestly, like based on testing, none of the set 15 decks seem really relevant. I mean, Finn is a sleeper pick. Maybe Cabra best at second, and most of the cards are archetype based as well. But honestly, I think from what I've seen, like most of the main players from the big teams, they've all got their cards already. Obviously, like speaking of like PPG, FOE, they're all sponsored players. They've all got their cards. They've already opened their cases. Like I've already heard like good stuff about that. So I think having the cards is not a problem for the players who are actually going to nationals, because I know a lot of the players are already like making the effort to like either drive there, take a plane there, taking time off. So I'm sure they will try to play the deck that they want to play. Like regardless of how much it is. So yeah, I think it'll be a great event. Definitely looking forward to it.
Yeah, it'll be very exciting. It's been a long time since it feels like a very high stakes tournament's happened, especially like in real life as well. So it's gonna be really fun to watch. Yeah, I'm bound to agree with both of you guys. It does feel like that. Even now in hindsight, saying that the cards were released a bit more in advance, I do think that the archetypes. We even discussed this last week that the archetypes are fairly lacking. But of course, there's a bunch of standout staple SR cards, and even some of the SCRs that I think you'll be seeing a lot in top card in the event. The event. That's my prediction. I think probably the most notable one that everyone's hyping up for Pan Zeno, the guest character that we all really wanted, everyone's really excited for. So I think that card will be making a splash in a lot of aggro decks, as well as in yellow as well for mono yellow Saiyan decks. We're talking about Tills and the Goku's a great card. Plenty of great staples going forward. Back on the point of like some players though, what are some of the players you guys are excited to see playing just playing the American Nats? I think two people I'm very excited to see my boy from Canada, Eric Soletto. I'm sorry if I said his last name wrong, but we've been good mates that I actually got to meet in 2018 Nationals when I went over there. He's a great bloke. He always does really well, so I'm keen to see if he will
Nice.
live up to the expectations he set for himself. And also Michael Legends, because he always plays Invoker. I'm curious to see if he'll play Invoker again. And speaking of Glenn, Glenn just rocked off. How are you doing, Glenn?
Speaking of legends, Glenn's here.
Sorry for
Yeah,
being
speaking of
late.
legends,
Welcome in, Glenn. Welcome.
That's too nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, just in time. Yeah.
So I'll ask you this question as well, Glenn, since you just joined. We're talking about what we think what American Nationals will look like the first week. Do you have any just like general thoughts might be happening, or like what are your thoughts going into the event since they've only had the set for a day or a couple of days?
I don't. Yeah, I don't necessarily think that there'll be too many massive changes from most of the lists that have going around. I think obviously there are a few SRs and staple cards that we discussed last week that might end up making an appearance, but I think the top decks will still more than likely, or the most represented decks, I should say, will still most likely be things like Cell Surge, Icarus, Soul Striker, um, Gogeta Tenno. Those sort of 4 or 5 decks will be the big chunk, I imagine. But I think once we hit top cut, I wouldn't be surprised to see a few kind of little rogue decks in there as well.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, a lot of people were complaining about the choice to do Nats after the release of Sand Showdown, but you want the newest cards in there. Like you want to see, you want to see what people can conjure up. Like it would be a little bit boring to me if it was sort of the same meta for multiple months leading into Nats. Like yeah, it might be ideal for testing and people like getting access to the cards in fairness, but like you can get the cards if you're really desperate for them. It might cost you a bit more, but you want to see the new stuff in there. So I support that decision to do it after the set drop.
Yeah, I agree with that as well because even historically speaking, they've always released products before big events as well. Like I think the biggest one was when the first like unique draft box came out. There was so many like money cards that were out there, like the Saint Instincts and Raiders Warcry, that everyone had to like dump their wallets for. So that makes sense. Like Banner's gonna make their bank, But yeah, you were gonna say something more?
Yeah, just I guess the main concern with this one is one, they've been a little bit inconsistent. Europe's getting the set a lot earlier in comparison to their nationals than America is, and they're not having the new set, which is an interesting choice. And the set was already delayed there, so I think that's where a lot of the consternation is coming in there, which fair enough. But as you say, better players will get their eyes on the cards, hands on the cards, and it'll be interesting to see how they've been able to test using resources like Untap, like Proxy, to see what they come up with.
Yeah, of course.
Anyways, back to the topic that John was talking
Yeah.
about before. Like, let me slide the names that I think we should look out for. First one probably being Robert Ritzy. So he is actually famous for playing aggressive decks. So he likes all sorts of aggro decks. He likes to end games on turn 2, turn 3. So hopefully he comes up with something creative like that. I might be able to use the idea off as well. So yeah, definitely looking forward to see what he's got in store for nationals. Yeah. And also, honestly, we'll talk more about net deck later. It's actually a strategy as well. So, anyways, the second player that I probably think that I'll be on the lookout for is probably Brian Samuel because he is the current defending champion.
He is.
For US, just like John is for Australia OCE. For those that don't know, so yeah, Brian Samuel always comes up with a bit of rogue decks as well. So, look forward to seeing what spicy stuff he will come up with as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think they're both like two just insanely good players. So I think the biggest thing about America, like obviously the majority of the players are American, so you have all the best players will be in America, and it's just really great to see just high quality play, which we'll definitely be seeing this weekend, which is going to be pretty exciting.
Heaps of good players in the US, like so many names that like we haven't even like barely gone through like 1% of the list.
Yeah, exactly. Do you, Glenn and Will, do you guys have anyone you got your eyes out for, seeing like any plays in particular, or just kind of want to see the decks that end up topping?
So I've got a couple. So there's Legends, as you say, Danny Nguyen as well. Of course, two incredibly skilled control players. I'm a control player myself, or I generally am, so I obviously like to see what they're doing the same way Benny likes to see what Ritzy's doing. But another player I'm interested to see, actually, and a bit of a weird one, is Peter Katani.
Really?
Now,
okay.
Okay, so the reason is this. Peter Katani was a reasonably competitive player for a while. He had to step away from the scene due to personal and interpersonal reasons. He's stepping back in now, and I'm interested to see, is he just going to be, memeing about a bit, having a bit of fun with it? There have been jokes about him playing announcer, or is he actually going to do some seriously interesting things? Because I think players like that, where they've got a proven history of skill, but you don't know where they're at now, are always very, very interesting to watch.
Yeah, on the topic with Peter, since I actually had the opportunity, since we're both on PPG for a little bit, I actually had the opportunity to talk to him with a lot, and I think it wouldn't surprise me if Peter makes a splash. I'm not confident that he will top cut, unfortunately, but I do think whatever deck he pilots is he always makes really well crafted decks. Like the combos he actually manages to come up with in the game is very powerful, and it's always been standout combos that do generally bleed out into other decks. And a lot of people do actually copy some of his ideas as well. So it is true that it'll be exciting to see what he comes up with, because that could be a very pivotal combination of cards that just ends up being the best combo. Maybe it just depends on who's playing it.
He's a very good engine builder.
He's a very good engine builder, yes. What about you, Glenn? You got anyone you want to see win, or?
I don't really follow the US scene that much, but I think I wouldn't be surprised to see one or both of the Hill twins in the top. I don't know if you guys mentioned them, but they sort of consistently seem to be in most of the events. Whenever I see like top cut lists and who's there, they always seem to be there or thereabouts, like they're the bubble or they get in.
Yeah.
And I guess I'd like to see myself being a green player. I'd love to see someone like Devon Butterworth get in
Yep.
because I know that he's like the,
Yes.
the green king from America.
Yes.
So that'd be cool. I feel like he's going to play King Cold, but you never know. He might be on something else. And
Yeah.
then his buddy Dahan, the old Janemba,
Good old
the
Janimba.
old Janemba player. Yeah, I think like those guys, they're all great players, and I think I wouldn't be surprised to see any of them top cut. But yeah, probably hard to beat Brian Samuel. I think, and Marquise McKinney. I think he's supposed to be pretty good.
Yeah, he's pretty good. There's a lot of like really standout American players. Again, back to the point I make before, these are the guys that like, put the most effort in. So it makes sense that they're like, wow, they look like amazing when they play. And it's, they're also like the big voices of the community as well. It's like if they're saying something, a lot of people listen, right? So it makes sense. So why it's gonna be exciting. Well,
Also, actually,
Yep.
while we're speaking of players, I'll give one more honourable mention. I generally do really like Andrew Duvall's decks.
Yeah,
Yes,
Andrew
very
Duval
much.
is crazy. That team, I think it's Universe C, Z or Z or Z.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. They have like really, like actually really great players that left PPG and FOE, and they just like Andrew Duval, John. I can't say his last name, the Jonathan guy. But they always make like crazy decks, and they always do really well. So it would be pretty cool to see like some of them make the distance as well. So but it's gonna be a crazy weekend, like for sure, if you're a DBS fan.
Did anyone say Justin Rios? Actually, I came
Yeah, I
late.
said Justin.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
Okay,
forgot
okay,
about
there you
that.
go.
Rios, Rios.
Because I was just thinking, I'm like,
He's
yeah,
pretty
for
good at this
sure.
game.
I'm not gonna lie, he might be the favorite to win. Like
Probably.
Yes, is insane.
I actually got the honor. I actually versed Justin Rios when I was in 2018 Nats. It was 1-2. He did beat me. Alright, it was close though. It went all 3 games. But his deck counted my deck, that's why. It was back when I was. It's actually. I was playing Mill Janimba and he was playing Cell Hand Destruction. It was doomed, dude. It was so
That's
doomed.
brutal.
I took one game, we take those. The bad matchup, we take
Oh.
those. But anyway, speaking of annoying decks, one thing we'll be talking about as well is decks that we think will make the distance. Obviously, it's one thing to be amazing at this game, right? All these great pilots we mentioned. It's also another thing just to play like the best deck. It helps you so much. Like, just if you're a 10 out of 10 player with a 10 out of 10 deck, that's probably a pretty good combination. So we'll start off with you, Will. What is the deck? What are a couple of decks that you think will make it like deep into the tournament?
Okay, so I guess if I sort of had to pick like roughly a top 5, I'd say Cell Zeno is probably a pretty good pick, although we didn't see any top cut in a recent event. That deck's not changing that much, so I guess I want to see how that goes. Gogeta Zeno, very powerful as well. Sorry, did I say Cell Zeno? I meant Cell Surge. Gogeta Zeno, very powerful aggro deck. There'll be some sort of blue pile there, most likely Soul Striker. I guess maybe SS3 if somebody figures out how to crack that. Probably a yellow pile, Icarus, maybe Golden Freezer, fingers crossed on that last one. And then I think probably Red Broly is a pretty decent pick as well here. I think I'm just getting a bit of steam behind it. It's probably the strongest red deck coming into this.
Yeah, I think the big thing about Red Broly is that just you play Red Broly and inherently has just some matchups that are like quote unquote free. It's just like some matchups like it struggles into certain matchups as well, and a good player knows how to play around Red Broly, but you just get free wins from just playing the deck. You literally just chilling playing Solitaire. It's a good time.
This is the Red Broly swap deck, to be clear for any listeners, not the new Red Broly with all the extra cards, which I don't think is as strong.
That deck will win for sure.
Yeah,
No chance. Yeah. Well, what about you, Benny? What are some of your picks? What's on Mr. Zhang's radar?
Just recapping on what Will said, I think I agreed that the top 5 best decks. So just to recap, Cell Surge, Soul Striker, Red Broly, Icarus, and Gogeta Zeno. They're arguably the best 5 decks at the moment. So I reckon some really good decks. Like I think that people are actually sleeping on. Like I think Cooler Mill.
Cool.
Yes, I agree.
Okay. Yeah.
Pretty good. Launch is actually pretty good as well. So I mean, and also Sin Shenron is actually really good. I did play that. I did play at locals, and I know some local boys that played as well. Deck is really good. So
Yellow Sin, to be clear.
Yeah, Yellow
Sin, yes.
Yeah, Yellow Sin is very good.
Black Sin is not real.
It is not. It is not. But I thought maybe Benny sees something spicy.
No.
Yeah, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if one of the Hill twins actually continue playing Yellow Sin, because I don't know if it was Eric or Eon, but one of them has been playing the Yellow Sin good for quite a while. So I think like these 3 decks are actually really, really good. So like if you don't want to pick the best 5 deck, like I strongly would consider these 3 if you have the cards and build the deck. Yeah, I think it's really good.
No, I think it's a good pick.
Yeah. I think Sin's a unique pick because it's kind of like, even though it is a yellow deck, some people kind of say it's to an extent its own color because there's so many archetype exclusive cards that you have to run in that deck. Like your deck is looking like 30 plus cards is just purely to the Sin engine where it's like, oh, if you go in the aggro build, you have to run the ball, the dragon, etc., etc. If you go in like a more control build, you play the big Sin that stuns the leader and like, you know, borderline cold bloodlust, stuff like that. So it's kind of like its own color to an extent. It does run the yellow staples, of course, but it does kind of feel like its own thing to an extent. But yeah, I do agree. It is a very powerful deck. It is essentially just like kind of new Dark Broly in a way, where it's like kind of just slams 30k beat sticks and you're just chilling, you know, just swinging, you know, 30k and he negates, don't take the damage. It's kind of like that.
Yep, absolutely.
Pretty
What
much,
about-
yeah.
What about you, Glenn? What is on Mr. Glenn's radar?
Yeah, I mean, like the decks that have been listed, I definitely agree with.
We'll agree.
Red
We say
Broly,
five.
Yeah, I agree.
yeah, it's pretty straightforward. I think the sort of premier decks are mostly cut and dry, but I think Red Broly, I think potentially can suffer into the Xeno Gogeta matchup, most specifically because of the Kai of Time negate that negates an attack and warps a card, because that can really like just wreak havoc with the Broly chain when they're around the 4 or the 5 drop specifically. And because both decks are kind of just trying to steamroll the other one by turn 2 or 3, like if you can interrupt their chain for 1 energy and then hit them with a pretty solid clapback, like you can do a lot of work, I think. And depending on the build of the Gogeta Zeno, you can kind of get under like Violent Rays and stuff. So unless they're playing maybe King Vegeta's Imposing Presence and stuff like that, I mean, maybe you side that. I don't know if you'd main deck it in Red Broly, but yeah, I think that could, if you get unlucky in Swiss and you just run into a couple of Gogeta Zenos early, maybe you just lose out. But the other red deck, actually, someone played at locals tonight, is King Piccolo. It's actually still
Piccolo.
pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah, like it. Obviously, them having the limit on drum, I think, is one thing, but the way that they're able to sort of manipulate their life, awaken, and then just start rejuvenating back up whilst putting on a lot of pressure is actually really, really big. And they can go super wide. And I think at the moment, most decks, or most of the top 5 that we've sort of listed, aren't necessarily built to handle really go wide decks. Like decks that go tall, you can interrupt, you can like block, you can negate, you can get around a lot of stuff. But the decks that are just going super wide, yeah, unless you're sort of seeing the floodgate negates, I think you can actually kind of get punished by it. So that could be another pick.
That's interesting, yeah, because I think obviously a lot of people, with the nerfs to like King Piccolo, with mainly the 2 like limits to 1 of the new ruler as well as drum, like people weren't really wanting to play the deck as much as those 2 of like literally the 2 best cards in the deck to an extent. So it's very interesting that you think that's going to be maybe a good rogue pick. It could catch people off guard because like what ends up happening is like these old like broken decks back in the day, people will just forget how good they were. And obviously, like as you were saying, it is a very go wide strategy and also draws a ton of cards. Like even without like drum's like, yeah, it stops an attack, but you just draw infinite cards with the it's Tambourine, yeah, the one that just draws a card. Yeah, that's the one. You just go to town drawing cards. So that's a pretty interesting pick. I like that. That's cool.
Yeah, because the Tambourine, you can like, it's 20k dual attack, right? So you can swing with it the first time and then you combo it off and play the other one from your life and get another.
Yeah, I think it's, I can't remember all the names.
Yeah,
But
Piano, I believe, is the one drop.
Actually, John's talking about Symbol.
I'm talking about
Symbol, there
symbols.
we go.
Sorry. I'm just.
One of
They're all the same. They're all Demon Clan. They're all green. I'm so sorry. It's like this is before they're all the Mechans in the show. That's my bad. That's my bad.
That's all good. All the cards are good though. Symbol, Tambourine, Drum. You know, they're all good family. You know, I like King.
Family, Demon Clan family, dude. And there's been
The whole band.
Yep.
But because the format's just so wide open, like I think it's. I was talking about it tonight at locals, but I think it's just too hard to try and main deck for everything. So yeah, you just gotta hope that you sort of luck into decent matchups throughout the Swiss and see how you go.
Yeah, one thing I want to talk about, sort of different, not along the competitive strain, but so I reckon this event, Dragon Ball was building up a lot of steam before COVID hit. And I think this game is actually desperate for an event like Nats this weekend, where it can sort of you can just show off the game. Like I think the game's going to boom after this. Like I think we'll get a big influx of new players. It's just made for big events like this. Big combos, leader swings, like the nostalgia. Like a lot of people, I think this is going to be great for the game. This sort of event, and it's a real shame that we were really building up steam. They had I'm sure Bandai had a lot of plans for for big events, for worlds, like all sorts of stuff, and COVID stopped it. Hit a brick wall, and I know a lot of games suffered as well, but I think we suffered more than anyone. And like this game, it'll really shine with these big in-person events. And I'm really disappointed that the Australians don't get to share in that experience, but because probably we could use the boost as well here. But yeah, I think the game, this is going to be really good for the game this weekend. I can't wait.
It's gonna be pretty exciting. I think everyone's like just looking forward to this. Like again, I was saying before, it's like it feels like it's the first like really big high stakes event we've had in a long time. It's also the first time since 2019 that Bandai's given away gold cards for prizing. There wasn't any of that during any other event, so it just feels like it's that time to play DBS. And I do agree with what Jesse was saying. It's like, yes, you just want these big explosive moments. You want to be able to like randomly, like not randomly win, but be able to push through, combo your whole hand. It's like, is it enough? It is. I win. That's it. It's like that's very exciting.
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah, I suppose we'll jump into a question I had for you guys.
Sure.
So just a hypothetical scenario. You're playing this weekend. You walk into the room for your first round. What is the deck that you least want to be facing first up? Something that could sack you for a quick loss and just tilt you for the rest of the day. I know it can depend on the matchup, but is there anything you guys would personally want to avoid seeing? Start with Benny.
Oh, honestly, I want to avoid Red Broly because if they high roll and you don't see the answer, see you later, bro. Like that's pretty much it. Yeah, Red Broly is very very oppressive. I do think if they high roll and they see everything they need, and you don't, then yeah, I think that is it.
That could be pretty rough.
Yeah. John, what do you reckon?
I think for me, like personally, it's never. My least favorite matchup to play is a mirror match. I sometimes deliberately pick decks. I like even let's just say now it's the same leader, but I'll pick a different archetype for my deck just to avoid the mirror match. I do not have fun playing the mirror match at all because it's kind of like we both know what we're gonna do, we both know what the other one's trying to do, etc., etc. So it kind of just feels like sometimes just decide on like who sees the cards at the right time, or it's like you went first, you just went, dude, it was nice, it was real.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that.
Will, what do you reckon?
Mill, probably, whether it be Janemba, Cooler, Blacks. Okay, maybe not that last one, but yeah, those sort of mill decks, they generally tend to punish the sort of like slower, dawdlier, draw a bunch of cards style of decks that I play. So, and the worst part is, I always feel like I get really close in that game, but I've actually been losing for miles for 20 minutes.
Yup.
Yeah. Glenn?
Yeah, I think mirrors, like John said, are generally pretty annoying because you can play or feel like you've played basically perfectly, but if you don't happen to see the card at the right time, and I mean, like any game goes like that, right? It doesn't necessarily happen just in a mirror. Like it can happen in any matchup. You've got like one out that you need, you're running 2 or 3 copies of it, and you just cannot draw into it for the life of you, and it's just not going your way. It's never a good time. So I think like if I'm potentially going to play Cell Surge, which I think is the way I'm leaning still, a Cell Surge mirror match is not going to be fun at all. Like we'll just be both sitting there looking at each other with 0 cards in hand, going, leader, swing, cool, skip charge, swing leader, your turn. Like, yeah, that won't be fun for anyone.
Yeah, I actually didn't think about the mirror matchup when I was thinking about asking that question. Yeah, that's really interesting that you guys said that. I could imagine just I think the mental side of that would be tricky.
Yeah, because like sometimes like it just feels rough when it's like you can get a bad matchup, right? But as we were saying before, this meta is so wide and so diverse. Like even if a certain matchup is like you could, even though that deck is favored, you can actually still win. Like if you're just the better player, and of course if you see the right cards at the right time, so on and so forth. But when it's just like, damn, I'm playing the same deck, it's just like it kind of just turns. It's not an exciting game as well. It's like, okay, whatever. it's just less fun when you think about when you think about there you go, Benny, you go.
I was gonna say I agree. I remember playing on the online webcam regional. I was like, because I decided to play Higher Dragon Icarus last minute, and the first game I go into, I see Ryan's name. I'm like, oh, okay, so I'm versing Ryan. I know he's a really good player, and I'm like, oh, great. And then we open the webcam, we're both playing Higher Dragon. I'm like, oh man. I was like, yeah, I guess mirror match can be very annoying sometimes. So, yeah, I agree.
Another thing, just with this as well, yeah, it just feels bad. This is all it is. It just feels boring, man. It's like, you think back, it's like, alright, end of the day, you're finished. Oh, okay, I spent the whole day playing DBS. What matchups did I have? Oh, I just played 6 mirror matches. And then my one other game was just an unfavorable matchup. Oh shit. This doesn't feel good for everyone, but that's why, I think in this meta it will be, amazing as well, even though it is so diverse. You're very... Except for maybe if you're playing the top 5 decks we were talking about before, I think you're very unlikely to have a mirror match. Or not unlikely, it's not impossible, but I'd say it's maybe 10% chance of a mirror match, 10 to 20 if you're not playing one of the king decks, I guess the top 5.
Yeah, in 2019, I think there was only 3 people playing my leader at that event, so my chances of getting a mirror match were pretty low. But yeah, I think in terms of feels bad, one of the things I hate about playing unfavorable matchups is when you play it out and you you sort of count back through your turns and you think about decisions you made on each turn and how you played it, and you know that you did not make a single bad decision and you did not make a single bad play for the whole game and you still couldn't win. That's what actually drives me crazy about getting a bad matchup, because I'm like, I know I played everything perfectly, I did everything exactly right, and I just couldn't win because I just can't in the matchup. That's the frustrating thing about wide open formats, because if you just flip a coin and get those bad matchups early in your day of Swiss, your whole event can just be out the door.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Part of a big run as well, is what you verse on the day. It's you might get the worst slap, but if you get a good run, it's easy matchup. You're chilling, you're cruising. It's on that as well.
Exactly. Heaps of luck is required actually to win an event. Nearly everything has to go right. Dice rolls. I don't know. You have to go through 9 rounds, 7 rounds. I think America is not doing 9 rounds, I believe, in Swiss, and then they're also doing a top cut as well. So you imagine winning that. It's such
it feels so good.
It's such a grind, yeah.
Yeah, especially for the 2-day events, it's actually insanely OP, because how it usually works is that if you're a higher seed than your opponent going into top cut, you get to pick who goes first or second. Oh no, I think that changes, so you always get to go first, right? But you want to go first majority of the time anyway. That's fine, whatever. It's insanely OP. I've had the luxury of being able to be first seed going into a couple of events. It just feels so broken. I'm playing an aggro deck, dude, and I'm going first every game. I'm chilling. I'm just chilling every game. It feels so good.
Yeah, I think that 2019, I was undefeated at the end of Swiss, and you were, so we ended up playing against each other in the last round of Swiss.
Yep.
And then 4-drop Kale as a card, and I just didn't have a chance. But
I'm sorry, Glenn.
that day I legit had 9 cards in my 15-card sideboard specifically for one matchup, which was for the Janemba Mill, and I didn't actually play Janemba Mill once in Swiss.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So if you just get lucky like I did, I lost every dice roll, which was karma for not playing a Janemba. But yeah, I mean, I didn't end up basically siding for the whole 2-day event all the way to the top 4 game. I just didn't need to.
Yeah. I think the game's changed a bit as well. I think there's more options now, because back then it's you kind of had to play the same card. Sideboard wasn't as crazy, but nowadays there's so many good tech cards that I think sideboard's way more important as well.
I think that sort of raises an interesting question of how do you guys go about sideboarding into such an open format and such an open event when we really do have this wide spread at the top, assuming it stays that way after American Nats?
How do you side, Benny? Because you're pretty good at siding from locals. You always have the good stuff.
Oh, honestly, yeah. Well, obviously, you side on what you think you need to side in. You're right. You got to use the. No, I was just saying, you just side in generic stuff. Obviously, if you're bad into Cell Surge, obviously you're gonna side Depuras, right?
I think you look at a deck list. I think majority of people's deck list will have 3 Sane Instincts and 3 Depuras in the sideboard, because I don't think anyone likes the Cell Surge matchup.
Exactly. Yeah. Honestly, like what Glenn said, you can play the matchup perfectly and still lose because Cell Surge is just gonna rip your hand away, and then have a good day. That's pretty much it. And honestly, if you want to side in something really good, Koitsukai is really good to side in. Obviously, hits almost I don't know how many of the
So
decks,
many
but
floodgates,
it's
so
so
many floodgates.
many decks. Yeah.
I hate that card. I hate that card's not banned, but anyway, that's
Yeah.
that's pretty
Hey,
cool.
fun fact: it didn't get banned. It also
It got
got a
reprinted
judge
twice
reprint,
instead.
and then
It got
it's
reprinted
a
twice.
mythic booster. Yeah. I mean, all
Booster
his
just back.
all the U3 brothers are gone except Koitsukai. So
The
yeah,
little robot
Koitsukai-
tin can.
Yeah, Robot's doing good. Honestly, yeah. So those two cards are probably like you should definitely consider siding. Like they're just really generically good, and you'd have to lose to sell as well. Cause, yeah.
I will say another tip that I always have, and something I try to instill in me whenever like a newer player is asking, like, "Hey, how do I side? How do I build a side?" is focus on the matchups where your sideboard is actually going to make a difference.
Yep.
If you've got a matchup where you're going to lose that matchup like 80-20 or something, and your sideboard can only push you to like 70-30, that's not going to really matter. Or if you've got to say on the other hand where you're winning 80-20 and that sideboard gives you like an extra 5%, that's not going to matter much either. You really want to focus on those ones where you're either at like 40% to win and your sideboard pushes you over the line, or you're like say 50-60% to win and your sideboard really locks up that slot, or allows you to sort of counter what your opponent might be siding in to bring it back down to even or bring it back up to even.
Yeah, so another thing about sideboarding, I'll just quickly go over it. Like for those people, like I'm actually like I think me and John, like I think everyone here likes playing best of 3. I know me and John talk about it all the time.
I love best.
We actually hate webcam best of 1. Like
100%.
in a online, especially we're playing for OCE online webcam, like best of 3 in 65 minutes. It's actually not a lot of time. So even if you're playing in person, you should always know what your flex spots are. You don't waste time actually sideboarding, you know what I mean? You know what cards you need to take out already. So go through your deck list, look at the ratio, just say, oh, if I'm playing Cell Surge, I'm bursting like Soul Strike or something like that. Like, what do I need to side in? What do I side out? Like, you ask yourself these questions already. Like, you don't think like, oh, like 5 minutes gone, you're actually just wasting time. So like, honestly, you should always know what your flex spots in the deck are, and then just get ready to side them out during the sideboard match.
Yeah,
and if you know they're... Oh, sorry?
No, you go.
Oh, I was just following up from what Benny said. Also, if you know they're on the table at the end of your game, like say, it's like, all right, cool, I know I'm siding out my negates because I won't need them in this matchup. If you've got some negates in your energy or your drop, chuck them out. Don't even bother putting them back in your deck. Just put them to the side. Chuck in your sideboard. Save yourself a bit of time there as well. You don't have to go searching for them.
My tip for that would be have your entire sideboard sleeved up in the same color sleeves as your main deck, so you don't have to fuck around.
I'm not gonna lie, it is actually so troll that some people don't sleeve their side deck. I just don't get that at all. Because it's like you're already dumping so much money to play the card game. Just buy a pack of sleeves, man. Come on, it's like the cheapest thing.
Yeah.
But honestly, with sideboarding, I think everyone said like correct things. Like, well, yeah, 100%. Like, you have to be optimal with your sideboard. There's no point like if you're gonna win a matchup anyway, you don't need to be like, oh, dude, if I put this card in, he has like a 1% chance of winning. It's like, who cares? You're probably gonna win anyway. And same with like, you want to you want your sideboard to be able to make like the close matchups way more favored for you. That's the big thing about the sideboard, I think. Which honestly, I don't particularly think I'm good at sideboarding myself, but I've gotten a little bit better. So it's like, Benny just tells me what to do. John, Koitsuka's good. Okay, I'll put it in the side.
I love sideboarding. Being able to play with an extra 15 cards,
Yeah, it does feel good.
If you're not using it, like, that's fine. That's fine. You're just missing out on some freebies. You don't.
You literally are. Yeah.
So what are we like saying in the same conversation? Then what are we thinking? Like a lot of sideboard inclusions would be. So you mentioned Saiyan Instincts, the tap 2 draw 2. You mentioned Dabura for the Cell Surge, which is
I think
pretty standard.
Cell Surge, No, Koitsukai as well.
Yeah.
I think like
Koitsukai.
we're lucky because Black has gotten a lot of just like obviously Black's meant to be the generic like sideboard staple color, but there's actually so many like generic good sideboard cards you can consider. Like Meki Kabura is one literally like, oh, this guy plays a boss once I play Meki Kabura.
Yes.
I say, oh yeah, you can't play your like a big one. Obviously, he's playing Meki Kabura and calling Broly 4 because they literally cannot play the game how they're intended to, which is nice. Another sleeper card on the sideboard. I can't remember the name of this card, but it's like a Supreme Kai counterplay, or it's like when your opponent plays a battle card, you play this for 1 energy. It draws a card, and in the counterplay skill, it says your opponent and yourself for the next 2 turns, or for the next turn can't attack with battle cards with energy cost 2 or less. That card is so insanely good, and every deck can play it. That's a card.
Original anniversary box, correct?
Yep.
The original one. I can't remember the name of it, but it's actually.
Got 3 of those in foils. I'm like, I love that card.
It's god tier into AOD. It's god tier into AOD.
That card is actually snaps because it's like, so literally, if you're going, like, let's just say now hypothetically, you pulled that in, you won game 1, you're chilling. Your opponent's going the opponent's going first. They do 1, they can't attack you or whatever. Turn 2, there might be a lot of aggro deck, whatever. You just pass your turn 1. I've got an energy up. They play any card. Yeah, I play that card. I'm gonna draw a card, and you're not attacking me, by the way. Thanks for coming. The store is closed.
The card, just for the viewers at home, the card is Supreme Kai of Time Disruptor. Counterplay, play this card, and battle cards with energy cost or 2 or less cannot attack until the start of your opponent's next turn. And it's got an auto when you play this card, drawing cards. So even as a flaw, it's just a cantrip.
It is broken.
And it's a 5k combo.
That as
Yeah,
well.
and it's 5k combo.
Yeah, so they swing leader and you just combo it off and you don't take that damage either.
Exactly.
The card that's good for is against Gogeta Zeno, where they're chilling with the 1-drops Goku and Vegetas.
Yeah.
That's a really good into that matchup.
Very, very good card.
I think Dark Power Black Marseille probably still sees some sideboard play.
Says the cell search player off.
Cell Surge.
Bro, I'm mainboarding that in Cell Surge.
Oh, yeah.
Like, honestly, on turn 3, right, I'm going into my Unison, and then I'll just Surge Awaken and play the 1-drop before I make you discard any cards, and then go for your Daburas. Go for it, bro. Like, I'm happy for you to do that. Like, it realistically doesn't bother the Cell Surge player at all, the Daburas. If they make it to turn 3 without dying, then they're a good chance to win the game.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that card's a good probably add in the main of Cell Surge, because it also gives you the option to self-awaken if you need to get down to 4 life, so you can do your Surge abilities. And it counters the card that counters your deck. It's pretty good.
Yeah, that's the alternative way to play against Cell, is to not let them go to 4, because then they can't actually use their Surge skill. But if they see the 9-drops and stuff, they'll just take their life
They're
anyway.
chilling,
So it's not. Yes, it's just such a gross deck.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of other just good sideboard cards. Can't think of any more off
I
the top
mean,
of my head.
Depending on what color you're playing, we can go through it like one by one
Yeah.
if you want. Like if you're really interested in this topic, you want to start off with like red, maybe.
Red's interesting because red's got really good floodgates. Like for example, Topo is
Yeah.
pretty good. You don't normally main. Depending on your deck, you main Topo, and then you got Violent Rays as well. That's like both those cards are like meta dependent.
It's got a couple of
Yeah.
sweepers. The Goku that's getting reprinted, the Vegeta that clears all 20k or less. Those are a couple good ones.
Oh, the Kayaken and the
Yeah, Kayaken
the
actually.
5-drop
Kayaken's
Vegeta,
really
yeah.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I think historically, whenever I played Red, I almost always ran 2 of them in the main anyway.
Yeah.
Because being able to like just pop something was
Kayaken's
also really
solid.
handy, like get a barrier card off. But what else for Red? I don't know if people would be mainboarding the King Vegeta's Imposing Presence. Is that what it's called?
I think that's
I
I think that's a main board card. That card's just too good. The fact that it's free. If it wasn't free, it would be sideboard. But the fact that it is free, I think like most red Saiyan leaders run 2 to 3 copies in the main and usually a third one in the side. That's like
I agree,
That makes sense.
They're good cards. Oh, main one is Broly Crown. You know, I mean,
Holy Crown Referee, that's like yeah. True, the most obvious one. True.
You got to look at Will's hand and find that riposte. You know. So.
Yeah. Which one? I've probably got 2 at 3.
I don't know.
It's
yeah,
funny
but-
how that's come back, because we spent quite a lot of time where no one would ever hold up like 2 energy. So it was essentially irrelevant, but now we're sort of back into a slightly slowed down, more mid-rangey kind of meta, it feels like, and so that card actually has way more value than it used to.
I think another card for red, a card I quite like to run, because I tested Broly BL this week and I played this in my sideboard. In theory it was good, I still think it's a good Beerus Ball. I think it's just a very solid tech, like mainly because a lot of the floodgates are like less than 15k power, for, like ignoring Topo, so I think it hits a lot. Even a big thing it hits as well is one of the best negates nowadays is the token negates. So being able to hit that is quite good when they get the attack and you also clear the blocker just using that card. So I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, I was going to suggest Focus Breakthrough as like an option for green, which is essentially fits the same sort of slot as Beerus Ball. I think they're both good cards in certain situations. They can be really good.
Kamehameha in black as well.
Yeah, super.
Big
Yeah,
staple of that.
that card's more. I think that card's slowly becoming a staple for aggro black decks.
Yeah, 100%.
I think it's main board. And
That's a main board card.
Yeah.
Benny's probably got 2 or 3 copies of that in the main board.
He's got that thing full on foiled. You know, he's chilling. He's already placed his order for the new Mythic Booster foil. You know, for that card.
Yeah. Off Collectors Company. You know, for those watching right now.
Yeah. Of course.
Shameless plug coming in. You know.
Not shameless.
All right, so what do we decide for yellow then?
Yellow has so many options, man. Yellow is like
yellow is option.
Honestly, with yellow's options being as good as they are, it's mainly just plugging your main deck holes, I guess. Like if you're not running the new Goku counterplay in the main, run it in the side if your deck can support it. If you think you're going to need more power of a Super Saiyan, plug that up. The one that I will consider is Nimbus, just because yellow's best negates are, at the moment, Riposte and Frieza's Army Reinforcements, which is the token negate for yellow, for those who are unaware. And those are both pretty... They are either hard countered by the negates that we mentioned before, so like your Beerus Balls, your Super Kamehamehas, or they're at least heavily impeded by it. Having Nimbus, which is a purely spell negate, is very nice. They're also pretty good there. Yeah, also very weak to Koitsukai as well.
Yeah,
so
I was
again,
gonna say.
Yeah, I knew I was missing a big one there, but having the Nimbus there, which is like one of the better spell-based floodgates we still have access to, is another consideration. Power of the Tree, I believe, is a new SR. Some people are high on that. I'm not
Power of
as
the
much
Tree.
personally.
Which
The
one's
new
that?
the Goku.
Oh, the
attacking
Goku.
Goku.
Oh, yeah, I've actually got this card here. I was actually talking to it
Yeah.
about Benny. I think.
Oh no,
yeah,
not that one.
This one?
The new SR negate, the one where like
The
Turles
3-drop
is-
one.
Yeah, the one that has a
wait,
Nimbus.
Forbidden
like,
Power.
Forbidden
Forbidden
Power.
Power. That's
Power.
right. Yeah,
Oh.
there we go.
I also
Yeah,
have this
Forbidden-
card right here.
Yeah, that one. Some people are reasonably high on that. I'm not myself, but if you've got a deck that say has like a lot of blockers or something, like say if you're on the yellow Trunks deck, if you've managed to crack that, if so, let us know. I'd be very interested to see that. But something like that, yeah, it's most playing in main deck holes.
I think that card's arguably pretty good in. Like, we were talking about it briefly before, Sin
Yeah.
Shenron. I think that card's really good in Sin Shenron because that deck
Yes.
is literally like blocker dot deck plus big dragons go.
I
It's
think
like
that's a
that.
very very powerful synergy, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, yellow just has too much stuff, dude.
Yeah.
Yellow's
Well,
chilling.
and the last two cards I want to mention, just because I can really break open some matchups, are King Slug, the one that stops your opponent from drawing.
Lord Slug.
The Lord Slug, sorry. I knew I got that wrong, but I want to say it confidently. Lord Slug stops drawing. Absolute Annihilation, the one that taxes extra cards.
Yep.
I mean, usually most yellow decks are playing 1 or 2 in the main board, but bolstering up your numbers there, or if you don't have the space,
Yeah.
really, really good.
You just side in the better one for the matchup, depending, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you go up one, down the other.
Yeah, I think that's.
Yeah.
If yellow has so many good cards for the side, I think
Mhm.
blue arguably has like not the most sideboard options. I feel like the only card that's like comes to mind when I'm thinking of like, oh, if I'm playing blue, what card do I actually want to side in? The only card I really can think of is like Mafubar at best. I don't think blue has that good
Yeah.
sideboard options.
You side in Ball Ghost, if you're worried about the
Ghost.
mirror match,
Soul
Hello,
Striker.
opponent. Another really good card to side in blue is, you got to get rid of your hate. So, it's a multicolor card though. Does that count? Like skill sharpened?
Skill sharpened.
The Piccolo Gohan?
Yeah, the Piccolo Gohan skill
Yeah,
sharpened.
it's
You're
kind of a
using
blue
it for
card.
mono blue. I count that.
If you're
Okay.
playing blue, if you're not siding
Yeah.
that, I don't know, man. You're probably not
Yeah.
worried about your hate cards,
Yeah.
because a lot of people are gonna side in like I don't know, like what Kami, Whis.
Yeah, Borgo,
You,
stuff
you,
like
you
that.
name all those untap hate. Like honestly,
Yeah.
if you're not siding skill sharpen, I don't know what you're doing.
Yeah,
but,
the only reason I say it's like blue doesn't have that many sideboard cards, blue already like. I feel like a lot of blue builds are kind of like set in stone to an extent. Like you're playing like. You're playing like 20 of the same, like 20 cards in every blue deck, no matter what archetype it is. It's always the exact same. I feel like there's not that much flex room for blue. I feel like a lot of the sideboard cards you see in blue are mainly just black cards and like maybe drapes and stuff like that. So I think blue, outside again Mafubar, and maybe striving to be the best, but that card's actually just worse of the card we were talking about before. So I don't feel like there's that much for blue.
Most blue decks have been shaving a number of the Trunks counterplay in the main, so just packing the extra ones in the side for decks where you expect like a big threat like a Fu or something is probably reasonably wise. If you're only running 3 beans in the main, which I've seen people do, whack the 4th one in the side, but blue's power comes from its actual power, not from its flexibility or variety, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that statement. I agree with that, yeah.
One thing I was going to say about siding, do you guys think that you could like fall into the trap of you've just lost your first game, and do you have to sort of analyze, did I lose this game for just sort of bad draws or bad luck, or like could you surely it's pretty easy to overside and you're trying to correct
Absolutely.
problems that haven't really existed and you just lost because you just got bad luck. Like I'm sure a lot of people would do that, just try and like fix problems that didn't really exist in the first place.
Yeah. I think. Oh yeah.
You know, you go.
Yeah. Well, I think with sideboarding, there are really 2 loose ways you can do it. And it's as Benny was saying before, you want to figure out where your flex spots are. You want to see what comes out, comes in. Now, the thing is that there are basically 2 ways you can side. It's either getting good cards in or getting really bad cards out. An obvious example there is if you're against a mill deck, you're probably wanting to get out some number of your draw cards, because those are just going to be dead or detrimental in the matchup, especially if they're off color. You know, if you're playing Soul Strike, you maybe want to cut some of your draw apes, for example, there. You may not have the best cards against Mill because it's a pretty fringe deck at the moment, but you just want to take those out to get something more impactful in. The other way is just, you know, okay, I'm against Cell Surge, I need to get in my Genembus, I need to get in my draw apes. What do I cut for that, for example? And it's just figuring out what's your core engine pieces and what are your flex spots, and ideally what's something that's both a flex spot and bad in the Cell matchup. You know, something that forces you to discard yourself, for example. Like if you were in yellow and main decking Nimbus, that's a card I'd cut immediately. Stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it's something that kind of takes time. I don't think a new player will be able to be like, damn, I just lost this game, I have deciding X, Y, and Z, right? I feel like it just comes like slowly understanding. It's like, alright, I lost this game because I made a misplay this turn, for example. It's not because of the cards I was playing. I think I could have won that game if I didn't do that. So it's definitely something that comes with more experience, I guess, because I feel like players that are new and starting to learn siding, because new players probably wouldn't side at the start, but once players are starting to try and get used to sideboarding, they could easily fall into the trap like, oh no, I need to put this card in, this card was so bad. So it's like, yeah, I think it's just something that comes with time, really, that when you get comfortable, like knowing what cards you don't need in a certain matchup.
Yeah, I think obviously understanding the reasons why you lost a game are a big part of then understanding like what you should side and when, like how you should side, because you can, as we were saying with blue, like blue doesn't necessarily have that many things that it'd want to put in the sideboard, except for perhaps things like ratios. Like when you're building your deck, if you're trying to keep it under like 53 or 54 cards, and you're really uncertain about that third copy of X or Y card, then it's more than likely going to find its place in your sideboard. And in certain matchups, you're going to feel like if I just had that third copy of X card, that maybe would have been a difference maker. So I'm going to try and get that into my deck for the next matchup. But yeah, it often just depends on what you're playing against. Because if it's like a Cell Surge matchup, then you're just going straight for your Devoras and your Draw Apes and stuff. That's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
But in a more 50-50 matchup, you're like, shit, I just really needed that one extra negate. So you're going to get that out of your sideboard and get it into your deck.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing I want to talk about. So we've talked about picking the best deck. What are the best decks that are? We talked about siding. Like obviously, you got to play optimally throughout the day. You got to get lucky as well, as we mentioned. What do you guys think are some things that you can do outside of actually playing the game when you're sitting down that could give you advantage over other players? Like for me personally, like preparation is huge for these big events. Like one like I would like each of you guys can just give a piece of advice on what what your preparation is and like what you guys do before an event. Maybe it could be like something like what's the word, like superstitious, that you like doing. Like for me, like getting a proper sleep is huge. Like a lot of guys would stay up late testing all night, trying to cram in sort of practice, but you got to have a good sleep. You got to get like at least get your 8 hours. And also another thing for me is putting like fresh sleeves on right before the event. Like I get clammy hands, and like if you don't put fresh sleeves on, like the cards will clump up, and your deck might not shuffle properly towards the end of the day. And like you got to have fresh sleeves. So fresh sleeves and a big sleep. What do you guys reckon is really important just to give you the edge?
Just in case people are wondering, you can buy sleeves on collectorscompany.com.au.
You can buy all your card game needs from collectorscompany.com.
Yeah, the sleeves are like Doodle is like shipping across the world is like really suffering, and Australia is copying it in terms of freight, and so a lot of Dragon Shield and stuff like that is getting, like, we might run out of sleeves one day, but yeah, it's a lot of stuff's waiting on ports.
The great sleeve shortage of products.
I can't believe the shortage of sleeves. Oh, it's
if you need it for Nats,
top loaders, man, top loaders are impossible to get for a while.
Yeah, that is true. Sure. That is true. I reckon, Benny, you want to go first? What's your how do you prepare?
I was gonna say, me and John are probably thinking the same thing. Like, when I wake up in that morning, we're gonna drink a coffee, alright? If you're not drinking a coffee, you can't think straight, So, like, for those coffee lovers out there, grab yourself a nice cup of coffee, just enjoy yourself.
Coffee, yeah. What about you? Will? What do you do?
So I have two things, sort of one directly game related, one not. The game related one is know your cards, know your rulings, especially in a webcam event where you're not going to be able to look at your opponent's cards. you're going to need to take time to look it up. Knowing as many of the popular cards in the format is a big thing. And also just, especially for your own deck, knowing some of the weird edge case rulings, if there's something you're unclear about, reach out to your local judge, reach out to the judge groups or the DBS community group on Facebook if you've got access to those. As for the second thing, especially if you are playing a slower deck, bring food, bring water. Make sure you have got that on you. There will be games where you'll get paired up against that do-nothing baby control player. That player is usually me. And, you'll have this round that'll go completely to overtime. You'll have no time to get lunch or anything like that, or even tell a mate to go get you lunch. Make sure you've got at least a snack or something on you. And then if things get really bad, just be like, yo, I'm taking a long time in my rounds. Hey, man, from locals, can you get me some KFC or something? I'll pay you back. Less of a thing at home, but definitely for in-person times.
Yeah, definitely.
What about you, Glenn? What's the ritual for Glenn, or what do you do?
I'm
What's your thing?
I'm the opposite, man. Like I tend to not test and not think about what I'm doing until I show up to the event, because I don't know, like historically in my life, I never studied for exams and I never really practiced for anything, and I tended to just do better because I have a weird mental block where I feel like I tunnel vision on stuff too much. So if I'm playing if I've settled on a deck, I know more or less what my decent matchups are and what my bad ones are. But if I feel like if I am practicing or testing against what I feel are my bad matchups to try and get a better hang of how it's going to play out, then I'm so concerned and so over tunneled on those things that I'll sit down opposite someone that's playing a completely left field deck or something I haven't bothered to test against because I felt confident against it, and I'll just bottle the whole thing. So rather than do any of that, I tend to just open my deck box and sit down and see how we go, which isn't good advice, but that's just how I tend to play.
No, that's good advice.
I think for me, I've got two things. For gaming related, just make sure you have an understanding of mainly what your deck does. Because even if you don't know what every deck in the room does, just you should be able to solve the puzzle of how do I win this game with my deck. You should know that for sure. That's one thing. Just kind of understand how your deck feels. And the other thing, it's more of like a personal mental thing. You kind of have to set the reality for yourself in your mind. If you go into a tournament thinking, oh man, I'm gonna scrub out, I'm gonna go 0-2, chances are that's probably gonna happen. I feel like because historically I've won a lot of events in Australia, and every event I've gone to, especially my first one, I always thought to myself, I'm gonna win this event. I'm gonna take home that shit. I have to hype myself up, because if you don't believe you're gonna win the event, who's gonna tell you that? Oh, you're gonna win, man. You have to believe in yourself and push yourself over the edge, saying that I am going to win this tournament today. I feel like it's you have to have confidence in yourself. I think that's a big thing as well.
Yeah, confidence is a huge thing. Like in terms of also interacting with your opponent, like if you need to be like me, I get intimidated in a way if I was playing a game against someone and I think that they know more than me. You just have to don't see your opponent as but don't be scared of them, this sort of thing. Just you have to be confident in what you're doing, and that'll rub off on the plays you make, and get rid of self-doubt is a huge one.
I think I was going to say I think there's a bit of gamesmanship in tabletop gaming and cards, especially when you're sitting across from someone, not necessarily bluffing as in poker, but you can do things where you leave an energy up, or you have certain cards in your hands, and the way that you sort of display yourself with your body language and your appearance to the opponent player, you can make them second guess if they're really going to be able to shotgun for game and do things like that, because you're sitting there looking super confident and you're on one life with 4 cards in hand, and they're like, ah, shit, I don't know if I can actually kill this dude. But in webcam events, I'm so less excited to play in webcam because it just doesn't have that same feeling. I'm not sitting opposite the person. I'm not looking at them, looking at their hands shaking as they nervously riffle through their cards, calculating their combo power. I'm like, nah, dude, I got this. In webcam, it's not the same.
It's really not, no.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie. If I was sitting across Glenn, I would feel pretty intimidated too. I didn't know.
Oh shit! Okay, dude.
Hey, Glenn's a big boy, right? For those that don't know, actually, Glenn, once he gets his webcam, you'll know, oh, Glenn's tattoos are sick, and he's a big boy, I'm pretty small, so I don't know.
Betty goes to draw a card. Glenn's like, I'm sorry, what did you say? I'm starting with no. Your turn's finished, man. It's my turn.
I'll put it back. I'll put it back.
Your turn.
Oh man.
The bunny, communist bunny.
Yeah, honestly, preparation is really important. So I don't know. Are we actually going to go talk about strategies that you should how you should prepare for nats and stuff?
I I think we can talk about. That's kind of briefly what we're talking about. Like again, for like, is practicing, right? Like obviously the only way you
Yeah.
improve at something is practicing. Also, this is actually a pro tip. This is like life advice. What I'm about to say that you can do. If you do shit on your own, it will take way too long.
Yeah.
So you're only one person, yeah. So the
Yeah.
secret is that you play with other people, you hear other people's opinions, you be open-minded, you hear what other people have to say. You're one person, you can only get so much information. Like let's just say for
Yeah.
example, you're starting a company, for example, right? You're starting on your own. You do some couple of moves correct, that's great, fantastic. You make a couple mistakes here and there, it is what it is, whatever, right? If you have a team of 3 or 4 people, in that 1 year of you starting a company, you literally have 4 times the amount of experience. That is crazy. Just work together with people and you will elevate everyone. It's not about being the best, it's about being in the group of the best people. Because you can only get so far on your own. You need like help. You need to help others help you get better at this game.
That is correct.
Wise
and
words.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, just to touch on something basically, what Glenn said before, like the word net deck. Like, honestly, I love net decking. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Like I said, I don't know if everyone here who is actually watching or listening to this podcast do work full time or like do they have the time to actually practice and play. Unfortunately for me, I actually don't. Apart from going to locals, I actually don't play a lot of cards. So like, I know the guys in America, they test a lot and like do all the testing for you, like, and they get the results as well. So those results are like established results. They've gone through really good players to actually get their top cut placing. And like if you can basically take the idea and just be able to pilot the deck and adapt and change, like honestly, that saves you a lot of time. Like
Yeah.
basically what John said as well. Like basically someone is putting in the effort for you.
Yep.
Not saying that you have to if you don't want
Yeah.
to, but there is also nothing wrong with it. Because I know a lot of people always say, "Oh, did you net deck?" I'm like, if I did,
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah,
Like,
what, bro? What do you say, man?
Work smarter, not harder.
just saying, like for
Yeah.
those people, like if you do want to take a deck idea from someone, don't be afraid to like net deck. Like, and if people like to talk smack, just let them do it. Like some people are like that. You don't need to be like toxic and stuff and just be like, yeah, I did, and just be open about it though. Like, always give credit to where credit is due.
Yeah,
I think that's the most
exactly.
important.
Yeah.
Sort of on the other end of that spectrum, and something that I wasn't able to do as much coming into this tournament because we all assumed it would be best of 1 here in Australia, being a webcam event. We only
Yeah.
recently learned best of 3. Is a really good tip I actually learned from a Magic player, not a DBS player, is once you've got your build more or less locked in, you've got like 85, 90% of your main board, start playing not only pre-boarded sideboard games, but also make a deck that is like the perfect deck for what you're fighting. So, you're on like say Soul Striker, for example. You're going to be playing against like a lot of Cell Surge, a lot of Red Broly, a lot of Gogeta Zeno that we mentioned. So imagine like, okay, a fortune teller has come to you and he has said, hey, if you play Soul Striker, you will play nothing but Cell Surge for the entire tournament. 100% of your matchups are going to be Cell Surge. How would you build your deck if that were the case? And you do the same thing for Red Broly, you do the same thing for Gogeta Zeno, and then when it comes time to actually lock in a sideboard, you know what you're building towards. Like, alright, how do I get as close to this as I can with the, 5 cards of allotted for Cell Surge, or the 3 cards of allotted for Red Broly? Like, what really overperformed, what really underperformed, what were the heavy hitters? And I think that's a really good bit of advice that if you've got the time, can really, really pay off for you.
Yeah, to John's point, I guess we're just going back around giving tips again, but to John's point, like if you're a newer player or perhaps a less experienced or less confident player, whatever happens to be the case, and you're playing at a locals, at least here in Australia, like all of the locals that I've been to, everyone's been like quite friendly and quite welcoming, and there has tended to be 1 to 2 better players at each locals, right? There are like the established guys that typically win most weeks or are playing in the winner match each week, and just ask them, ask them for tips, or ask them, after your game's over, be like, on this turn, I made this play. Do you think that was correct, or what would you have done differently? And like that's a way that you can kind of learn, because if anyone plays video games or does any of those things and plays at a relatively decent level, like on a ranked ladder or whatever, one of the best ways you can improve is to sort of watch your VODs and like critique your own matches and see like, I made a really shitty decision at this point, or I should have done this thing differently here. You just do the exact same thing with card games, and like on turn 2 I made this play, I should have not tapped out, or I should have not played that
Yeah.
card, and that would have meant that I had a better option going into the following turn. So that's a really good thing. And yeah, I think, just asking. Oh, and then actually on Benny's point about net decking, if one of the things I would say about net decking is your best option, if you're wanting to net deck, is to try and wait until you can see a video with an interview of the person that played that deck, because
Yep,
they will
yes.
often
Yes.
they will
Agreed.
often break down the deck fairly well, give you a decent idea as to why they played certain cards. But the most important thing is they'll be able to, more often than not, they'll get asked, all right, what cards didn't perform, what cards
Yeah.
would you
Yep.
probably take out?
Yep.
And
Yep.
then
Yep.
and they'll say, oh, this card was bad, this card was bad, I probably should have run one more of this card. And then when you're essentially net decking
Yeah.
their deck, you can take their own
Yeah.
advice after they've just played a 2-day event, and you
Yeah.
can go, all right, cool, well, they said they wouldn't run this, they'd drop that, they'd add this, and then you've got the essentially more optimized version of the deck that they just hit top cut with. So that's the best way to do
Yeah.
it.
I will say, sort of leading off of both the points we had there, when it comes to testing a deck, unless it is a case, I would say even if it is a case where they've given you the optimization, always play a few games with the deck as built, just so you can understand exactly where it is, especially if you think there's like a weird card there that you wouldn't put in there, see how it plays, see how it feels, and then you can know, okay, is this right for me, is this not? And the other thing with testing, testing is not about winning, it's about seeing what your deck can do. So if your training partners is like, oh, actually, I think I could do this better, do you mind if I take that back? Let them, and hope that they give you the similar courtesy. Or even if you've got like a final kill turn that they play out and you lose the game, and you're just like, hang on, I think I could have done this differently if I negated here rather than here, or if I used my super combo earlier or later or whatever. Rewind that turn back to the start, play it through there and say like, okay, was this as close as I thought this was, or did they really have me in the squeeze and I need to like just not get into this position to begin with?
I was gonna say I'm very I was gonna say I'm very guilty of actually doing that. I know, like for John and Will, who's always played me, I actually asked them, like, during our locals
all the
game,
time.
This is what happens at locals. Benny's like, John, I don't know what to do. I'm sitting there, 1 life, 2 cards in hand. Benny's got like a whole essay in his hand. He's telling me, John, I don't know what to do. And I'm just sitting there, I don't know, Benny. I think you got this, dude. It's fine.
It's not as bad as that, honestly. Like, I'm saying, not those kind of situations. But generally, those ones I can figure out myself. But sometimes I often ask them. Like, I know this week I asked him as well. Like, I remember the option was, if I played Riposte, apparently I would have lost, says John, right? So I asked him.
Needed you to play Riposte and I would have won. It would have been great. But instead, I just got clapped like I do every week. Benny, just let me win 1 local. It's been like 2 months, please.
I was gonna say I did pick the right card to play, which was the Steadfast Goku. So I was like, okay. We talked about it afterwards, though. Like, taking constructive criticism based on what Glenn said before as well. Like, always ask for feedback. Like, that's how you improve.
Yeah, I would say also, especially anytime when you've got a choice, like an example I'll give is casting Broly Crown, right?
Yep.
A lot of the time you'll cast that and they'll just have like a Topo in their hand and you'll just, okay, well, it's the only negate, cool, I'll take the Topo, I'll swing him for win. But if you're sitting there and you're in a testing match, obviously don't do this in a tournament, and your opponent's got, like, say, a couple of different negates and you're really agonizing over the pick, you just go to your opponent and be like, hey, look, which of these would you really not want me to take if I was in your position? And if they're like an honest testing partner and they're wanting to improve with you, they'll be like, well, look, I reckon you should take card B here because honestly, card A is really only going to get me out of a situation if things break well anyway. This is going to give me like a better chance to get myself back into the game if I survive the turn, that sort of thing. Stuff like that is very good, and it allows you to learn the other side of the matchup as well, which can be very valuable, especially if you're testing partners on a more popular deck.
Yeah.
Just one thing I want to bring up before we sort of start wrapping up. So on the subject of tips, Benny is the freshest off. He's the freshest off a win out of all of us.
Yep.
Well, out of you guys. So Benny, what's your tip for handling the pressure in those sort of finals games or it could be a feature match or it could be top cut? Like, have you got any tips for handling the pressure? Like, it's because it's me personally, I crumble if there's like if I was playing something like if I was playing Digimon at locals and there's just guys come around, like about 5 or 6 guys standing on the table, my mind blocks. Like I really struggle to get through that. Obviously it comes with you guys are really experienced players, so more confident you are in your decks, more confident you are in your plays, you'll be able to act better under pressure. But have you got any wise words for handling the pressure?
Honestly, I think for like us experienced players, like I don't know, for me, like I don't really feel pressured playing against like a specific person. It's more like I know some of maybe like the matchup I'm not too comfortable with, but like overall, like I'm pretty relaxed. Like for anyone who's versed me, or like like even in the finals, like I'm so relaxed. I'm always talking to my opponent. Some people say I might talk too much. I'm actually distracting them, but I apologize.
Okay.
Just in case I'm that guy. Like if you've seen any of my games at any like even high level event, you'll see me like everyone's like so serious. They're like playing their game. I'm actually always laid back and just like what's going on? Like if you know me in person, that's actually the kind of guy I am. So like I'm usually quite relaxed, but that might be a personality thing.
So would you say sort of trying to engage with your opponent and like talk to them, ask them how it's going?
Yeah, I honestly think like if you treat
Distract
the
them.
person,
Distract them, flip their cards.
Yeah.
all right, I'm just saying
Opposite.
like if you
Ask them how many cards they have in their hand 6 times in a row.
I hate that. That actually triggers me so much when someone does
it actually
that.
does as well. Every time Cell Search players do that, I'm like, yep, I'm triggered. But it is what it is. But like, yeah. So honestly, I think like when you talk to your opponent, you don't feel intimidated. So that might ease your pressure a little as well. So
Yep.
Also remember to activate the skills on your leader before you awaken. Because if you flip and don't do the stuff, the judge won't let you have the effect.
Some judges are a bit mean about that, but
yeah. I will always just declare that I'll just be like awaken, draw 2, so that way there's like no
questions.
yeah, exactly. The tip I have in regards to nerves though is nerves are mostly going to come when you're losing, because if you're up ahead, as long as you're not getting too cocky, you're probably not going to be that nervous, if you're far ahead enough. So it's honestly, and this also does apply a bit of winning, play to your outs and play away from your opponent's outs. If you're going to get really nervous, you're thinking about like 50 different things, but if you can just focus like, okay, I need to stop this, and this attack. I need to be able to drop this battle card. So all we're going to think about is how do I stop these 3 attacks and how do I keep this card in my hand? If you can just focus on that one thing, it's so much easier to tune everything out because you're not stressing about everything. You're just going like, I need to get from A to B. How do I get from A to B? And you can put all your mental focus and energy into that. Or alternatively, if you are winning, it's like, yep, I'm going to swing in. What could blow me out here? Nothing? Cool. Dumb hand.
Vomit
you could have
all the cards. Yeah.
All right, he could have Heroine's lineage. Sweet, let's try and bait Heroine's lineage. That's all we need to do here.
Yeah, that's funny. That's a good point. But anyway, guys, we've been on for a while now. We've been talking for over an hour. This is going for pretty long. But if you actually stuck around the whole way, let us know. Type something. Type Will likes vomiting cards, and then we'll know that you watched the whole podcast. So anyway, guys, really hope you guys enjoyed.
Just quickly before we go. So. What's the one deck that each person? What's person's one prediction on what's going to win the weekend? Just not like a sort of like handful of decks, but what's the one deck you think is going to take it out? Will?
I'm going to go for the Dark Horse. I reckon Red Brawly's going to spike it.
All right, John.
Golden Freezer, why not? Let's go for a fun pick. Let's go for a fun pick.
Don't throw me with a good time.
Okay.
I'm gonna go for I want to go for a rogue one as well. Sin.
Ooh,
Sin.
okay.
Yeah.
Glenn.
I think Gogeta Zeno wins.
There you go. Everyone's on something different.
All right.
Anyway.
So you got to stay to the end for the good stuff.
For this, yeah. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Let us know if you enjoyed the podcast. Feel free to ask anyone questions, and until next week, we'll do another episode. Then we'll see you all next time. See you guys.
I'm waving, but you can't see me.
We can see you.